the decision makers presentations, and I'm going to introduce all three of them so that we can then cycle through the presentations pretty quickly. I think the next slide is probably Aaron, so you can go there if you want. And Aaron Ordauer is with the New York City Mayor's Office of Sustainability. Good background, policy development, technical assistance programs related to energy efficiency and clean energy finance. He manages programs to support private building owners, importantly, in completing energy retrofits. And he's particularly engaged in new policy development, promoting deep energy retrofits, building electrification, and clean energy solutions for low and moderate income communities. So quite relevant for the discussion we're having. Then after Aaron completes, you'll hear from Margie Russell with the New York Association of Realty Managers, and she administers the New York Accredited Realty Manager Program, which is a real estate management certification program aimed at building owners, managers, and supervisors of maintenance personnel. And then third, we will hear from Karen Phillips, who's the Vice President and Director of Development of New York State Homes and Community Renewal. In that role, a big piece of her work is to coordinate agency-wide programs and policies to promote energy efficiency and resiliency of affordable housing statewide. So these three folks are all deeply engaged with decision makers and helping drive the decisions. And so I think they're a great panel for us to hear from. And with that, I am going to turn it over to you, Aaron, if you've got a good audio connection. Do we have you, Aaron?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I hear you incredibly loudly. Could you be a little bit further away from your microphone and try again?
Second.
Speak a little bit.
I'll
tell you what, I'm going to mute for a second and make sure you're not looping off of me. So let's just, everyone please be patient with me. And if we don't get this quickly, we'll hop to a different person and fix it. But I'm going to mute quickly, Aaron, and then speak again. So count to 2 and then speak.
Hello.
I see he's muted. Caitlin, can you unmute Aaron? Aaron, try again. Okay, I think what we're going to do, I'm going to have the technical team talk with Aaron and try to see what's going on there. If we could advance the slides.
Can we try one more time? How does this sound?
Oh, we got you, Aaron. Perfect. Let's stay with Aaron.
There we go.
And you sound perfect now. Welcome to the discussion. Thank everybody for their patience. Aaron, take it away.
Okay, great. I'm sorry about that. For my co-discussants, for me, the computer audio seems to be better than the phone. But hi, everyone. Apologies. It's a real pleasure to be with the New York community here during these challenging times. But I'm really glad that we're all together talking about this future that we all share. Thank you to NYSERDA and to CPC for bringing us all together. If you could go on to the next slide, please. I am going to talk today about a few initiatives, including the legislative framework under which we in New York City are supporting deep energy retrofits and trying to support building stakeholders of various different types to get started on their energy efficiency pathway, and then also to really do these deep energy retrofits that we're talking about today. Next slide, please. Everything that we do here is in New York City is framed around OneNYC, which is our sustainability and economic development vision for really achieving a robust, sustainable, resilient, and economically just New York City. Specific to the work we do here, we are focused in on a couple commitments that are sort of new last year, including a commitment for New York City to achieve carbon neutrality and 100% clean electricity for our city operations. We have new legislation around buildings cutting their emissions, and a commitment for the city to procure clean hydropower directly to support our city operations. Next slide, please. Greg gave a great overview of the Climate Mobilization Act earlier, so I'm not going to go through each of these, but I will remind folks that the state and the city are really operating in lockstep with one another to support and encourage and push the built environment to really working towards that carbon neutral end goal by 2050. Local law 97, our carbon emission caps for buildings is the biggest driver that we already talked about, and I'm sure we'll discuss more going forward. I also wanted to underscore that this year, Local 195, our building energy efficiency grades are already going into effect in buildings across the city. So that is for buildings that are, that is for all buildings. You'll basically have a grade that when you walk into a lobby, you'll see this is an A building, this is a D building, kind of like a health grade in a restaurant, really expanding the visibility of energy efficiency and the empowering potential buyers, potential tenants with information about where they're going to spend their day. If you can go to the next slide, please. So that's the legislative side of things, in addition to our energy code, which is really trying to get at new construction buildings. We also spend a lot of time trying to create an enabling environment and creating community around energy efficiency, and then the myriad of stakeholders that are in this space and that we're talking about today. A lot of what we do in partnership with organizations like the Building Energy Exchange, and I'm sure many of the organizations that are tied in here today, is create educational programming, training, networking opportunities, case studies, technology primers about the technologies and the experiences of building owners and building decision makers that are already sort of working to achieve towards these energy goals. And the programs and that we develop, a lot of them focus on what we refer to as sort of everyday efficiency, sort of getting broadening the base of those folks that are thinking about a project. So helping them decide to do their first steam heating upgrading, or even a high efficiency lighting project. But increasingly, a lot of our work is focused on how to support high performance building retrofits and introducing folks to technology, particularly things like air source heat pumps for domestic hot water, other high performance electrified heating systems or building systems. Next slide, please. The thrust of the programs that we provide, or the linchpin of that, is a program that we've run called the New York City Retrofit Accelerator, which provides free advisory services to basically streamline the process for doing energy efficiency projects in buildings. The Retrofit Accelerator plus a sister program called Community Retrofit NYC over the last 4 years helped more than 5,000 buildings to do energy efficiency or clean energy projects. And we're optimistic that in the next month or two, we'll be launching, still, despite the circumstances that we're under in the city, the New York City Accelerator, which is the expanded version of this program that will aim to support the next 5,000 buildings over the next 3 years to do clean energy projects by providing this sort of free trusted advisor that gives direct service and assistance to buildings. Next slide, please. While again, a lot of the work we do is focused on this everyday efficiency, we developed over the last couple years a high performance track, and that's really supporting buildings through the capital planning process, really identifying leaders that are willing to work towards what it takes to get to a sort of a 2030 level of local 197, very low carbon state. So creating capital plans that integrate energy efficiency with a lot of education and training towards all the decision makers at those organizations, Developed an internship program with CUNY where we train their engineers and architects on high performance building technology and place them with companies. And we're trying to place people now. So reach out to me after this if you're interested in an intern for the summer or the fall. We train decision makers on high performance retrofits and then support the implementation of those early projects. Next slide. We're doing that through this direct assistance, but we're also streamlining some of this technology as part of the compliance that's in the city. So local law 87 is our energy audit law that every 10 years, large buildings above 50,000 square feet have to comply with. Starting this year, when building owners complete the local law 87 audit, they will also automatically get a 15-year capital plan based on the inputs of that will compare what their auditor collects and recommends in terms of energy conservation measures and overlays that with what a recladding and heat pump could look like and what their end energy performance would look like. And that'll be totally free. There'll be no cost to develop it. It'll be automated, but it'll be enabling decision makers to look at what those what the sort of an end goal, a very low carbon state of their building could be. And we hope that will help to push the conversations and introduce more folks to of the decision makers what is possible. Next slide, please. We also, in addition to the direct assistance that we provide, we've run a program for a dozen years called the Carbon Challenge, which is a voluntary leadership program to recognize our leaders across different real estate segments that have committed to at least a 30% carbon reduction goal. We're actually looking forward to announcing in the coming months a carbon neutrality challenge. We already have more than 10 participants that have committed to carbon neutrality by 2030, but we'll say more about that at a later date. One of the challenges that we face is that, or that we've been hearing a lot about, and especially is having to do with the commercial office sector, and specifically this commercial owner tenant challenge for sort of responsibility over energy conservation measures and energy use, et cetera. And so we've actually been spending a lot of time coming up with specific solutions with our leading real estate partners through the Carbon Challenge to work at this commercial owner tenant conundrum. And we have these 5 products that are up here on the screen, building specification sheets that can be standardized with energy conservation or low carbon features at fit out, tenant design criteria to achieve a similar goal, whole building operations and maintenance plans that are really mainstreamed and that involve tenants, energy push notifications for those buildings that are already designing that already have the energy management systems in place, and an on-lease financing model that we developed with the New York Green Bank, all of which are trying to get at this sort of that partnership that has been a challenging nut to crack, but really excited that we already are starting to put these out in the marketplace, and I think that they're worth expanding further out. Next slide, please. These last 2 slides here get at motivations. We, in working with 5,000 buildings across the city, we recognize that there are different market stakeholders and different asset classes are motivated by different factors. And we actually did some market research where we brought together like 50 or so leaders in the industry. A lot of them are Carbon Challenge participants, to sort of really detail out what motivates people in different ways, and so that we can then be more deliberate in our outreach through the Retrofit Accelerator and the Carbon Challenge, how we engage folks on retrofits. So some of this is probably going to be pretty obvious: increased asset value, enhancing marketability through brand recognition, short-term return on investment through operational savings, a lot of what Sadie and others are talking about in terms of the affordable housing sector, recognizing that equipment failure is a major opportunity, but you need to plan towards that. And oftentimes, depending on the organization, there's an internal commitment to sustainability that is worth actually, using as a motivation. Next slide, please. And then I thought this might be helpful to engage, sort of breaking it out by different asset type. That a major finding that we've had was that sort of for market rate rentals, long-term holders being different than short-term holders, and for long-term holders that tend to have larger portfolios, operational efficiencies is a really key thing. I think some of the work that Stuytown Peter Cooper Village is doing in New York City, increased asset value also being a part of that. But in the short term, for short-term holders, it's about commanding higher rents from an improved tenant experience. And I think that that's becoming more apparent as everyone is spending all day in their apartments now. For co-ops and condos, it's about sometimes finding those sustainability champions on boards and giving them tools to bring these messages to the rest of their board to affect decision makers. As we already discussed, in affordable housing, it can be really about reducing operating costs where rents are pretty restricted. In the commercial sector, it's about sometimes differentiating your building from others and even repositioning. There's some success stories of moving from a Class B to a Class A office. I think the Empire State Building is a great case of that. And of course, in doing that, enhancing tenant attraction. In the hospitality sector, which we haven't talked much about, decreasing operating expenses, and they do actually tends to be a more regular capital planning cycle to link into. And then with institutions leveraging the fact that they are mission oriented, but they're also tend to be nonprofit, so cost savings can be an important part of it, and of course patient care in the health sector. That's all for this introduction to the conversation, and I look forward to talking more in the discussion.
Thanks, Aaron. While the team unmutes Margie, let me just do a quick recap. You started out really laying a nice solid base of role, both of setting the laws correctly, getting the right programs in place, focused in the right direction. Great discussion about the work that your Retrofit Accelerator is doing and how that can be impactful. Initiatives like your carbon challenge. And then you ended here with these kind of motivations, both generally about retrofits and then by asset type, which is a really wonderful way to kind of capture and think about the work that we're all doing. So thank you very much. I think the next slide is probably the bio of Margie. And so with that, Margie, why don't you pick it up? I presume you are unmuted. So are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly, Margie. Take it away. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. In addition to my work at NYARM and 32BJ in the last 20 years prior, I was a portfolio and on-site manager of multifamily buildings. So I've been at this for almost 40 years. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Nope, next. Okay. So my emphasis is totally at the building level, and it's not we're in the energy saving business or the carbon reduction business. We are in the sales business and how we're going to sell it. And so what does the average salesperson do is start with the low-hanging fruit. And I feel where that is where New York City Retrofit Accelerator left off. For the last 10 years or more, there has been this great list of approximately 8,000 the gas guzzling and soot spewing buildings that were the target, and we tracked it. And so every salesperson in the industry that had any kind of energy saving service or device worked that list to constantly sell what they had to help that building, get into compliance. So we have those, and I've heard people say 5,000 buildings. So there's this 5,000 to 8,000 buildings that have done so much. I think they're ready for the next stage. One, they've been through the process. They and the staff has bought in, and they they're excited about it. They're ready for the next step. So to me, it's let's look, if we want to talk about what we can achieve by 2050, let's not lose momentum that we have now. So I say let's try to reconstitute that list, that chart that was so great and interactive that you had the building owner's name, you had all the contact information, and so all these partners who we want to attack this situation can use that. It's a masterful program. Okay, so it was during that time that the buildings were targeted through the conversions from mostly number 6 oil to natural gas. Okay, so of all those 5,000 to 8,000 buildings, where do we start? Well, let's look for the ones who have done what they believe as much as we can do, but they still have a poor energy grade. So that's a place to start. Look at where the C's and the B's on the energy grades, okay? And then it falls into, getting that list public again, because it wasn't just for the sales people to use, but buildings were very anxious to see what their building looked like online that anyone can look at. So that's my comment on that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so under the other professionals to engage beyond owners, architects, engineers, and end users, this particular idea, I have to credit Bill Payne from ONS Associates, an engineering firm, because he said there's all these people out there selling, which then brought back to me all the people that used to, the salespeople that used to work these lists. And so I would say there are more salespeople selling contractor services, pump systems, janitorial supplies that are now, helping into the whole carbon reduction program, that we need to bring them in. Okay. So engaging building staff, 32BJ, the union trainings have done a marvelous job in being right at the edge of everything and bringing every possible appropriate training in. So the building staff, they are the people who think about the building more than anyone else. The superintendent, the resident manager is managing it, the board is overseeing it, but it's the building staff that says to themselves quietly, or if in the locker room, why don't they just do this? Or they won't listen to me. Why don't they just do this? So we've got to give more deference to the building staff, okay? And apartment brokers and salespeople, they love to sell value added. And so when the average broker walks down, East 70 whatever street, and there's a white brick building on one side and another white brick building on the other side, and they go to the building that they can sell, there's a lot more going for it. So we definitely, the brokers and the salespeople have to be getting involved. So at what point in our process should we begin working to get them involved? We're talking about long range here. I say immediately for the low-hanging fruit, because at every level of all these people, there is something they can do now with their interaction with the decision maker. And unfortunately, we have everyone's captured attention right now on how can we engage the mind? How can we have them do something in their building that they won't lose any kind of momentum for? Okay, next slide, please. What would it take for a building owner to go for maximum efficient upgrades? Well, what worked very well, whether it was from 2008 to 2018 in that time frame, the community boards were pushing it. At the time, Gail Brewer was the Upper West Side city council person, a lot going on with that. The peer pressure, co-ops and condos are always comparing each other, and then getting back to the online listing of the buildings. Let's reconstitute that Retrofit has done. Okay. Then really this part, I got more from Bill Payne from ONS Engineering, so I'm just going to touch on it. I'm sure he's going to be one of the participants later. Create engineering and contractor task forces to figure out. What do they have to figure out? Well, what is the shortest, most economic conversion to come to carbon neutral? because as we heard before, every building is so different. Every multifamily building, everything about it is so different. But there are still, say, only maybe a dozen of different components that have to be figured out to move from one type of system to another. So to find the shortest and most economic conversion. Then most efficient use of dual use heating. There, unfortunately, was too much decommissioning of fuel oil, which we're not talking about fuel oil, but if we're trying to convince an owner to go the next step, and they only recently bought a system that's got a good 10 years on it, and you know what, I have to decommission that? Well, maybe now is the time to figure out a way to keep that mothballed. So if we ever have to go off the grid for energy, at least in a short-term period, especially now that we see anything is possible, in a short-term period, we should be able to be off the grid for heating. So if we can somehow, as an industry, say it's not so bad to be able to burn a little fuel sometime because we need to be totally self-contained for whatever emergency is coming our way. So this is what I would like to see for the engineering and the contractors to figure out. One or two other comments about really surrounding the situation. Unfortunately, because of the situation now, but fortunately all the kids are getting their laptops and they're online, technologically speaking. They all live, 85% live in apartment buildings. So let's put them to task. Obviously, the school system, let's put them to task. They've all got their computers. They're sitting at home. They can think about their buildings, and let's get some of their ideas. That whole carbon challenge thing was a big success, and so I'd say just more of that. With reference to, there was a question before, a comment that mortgages are refinanced approximately every 15 years. Well, in the multifamily end of things, it's more on average every 7 years, which is good news for this program, okay? Because they never pay off their mortgage. They just keep rolling it over, pull out the money, use it for projects, or use it if it's a private owner to buy other buildings. So it's really a 7-year roll, okay? So that's a good thing to plug in because we don't have to wait for 15 years for that next big refinancing. And with that, I've got it.
Great, Margie, thank you so much.
Done.
And I'll do a quick recap while folks tee up Karen. And at some point, if you all, Zach, if you want to advance the slide so people can see Karen's bio. But a quick recap would be what I heard was, hey, if we really want to make some progress, let's start with the low-hanging fruit, build from there, get at these lists and make them public, and all the other great ideas you gave us. Let's make sure we engage really the whole village of actors, not just a couple, to make progress. Let's focus on how we really get to these the maximum efficiency solutions with an array of ideas that you shared with us, Margie, and then putting these task forces together to really look at how to solve some of the most difficult challenges in the system, things like short-term economic focus, dual-use heating, mothballing, salvage value, all those sort of great things you talked about. So I'm going to move us to Karen, but before I do that, I do want to encourage you all to start now creating a list of folks who want to raise their hands. It's really just virtual, so it doesn't hurt, even though Greg said it did earlier. But start clicking those buttons and I'll start a list. It can be for clarifying questions from any of the three panelists, or you may just want to engage in a dialogue. And after Karen's done, of course, we'll put some questions up to guide you in that as well. Lindsay, I see you have your hand up. That may be left over from last time. If you are wanting to be first in line, leave your hand up. And if you're not, then please take your hand down. Karen, welcome. Karen Phillips, do we have you? She is not muted. Let's see. Karen Phillips, do we have you? Karen, if you are trying to talk, could you drop a note in the Q&A, please, or raise your hand or let us in some way know that we have you. And I'll pause to see if we get that. And if not, we'll figure out another way forward. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is, yes. So let's do this. If any of you have clarifying questions, hang on a second, I've got a note here. 1 second, please, folks. All right. So let's do this. If there's a clarifying question or two that you have for either Aaron or Margie, if you'd raise your hand, that'd be awesome. While we try to figure this out, and we'll try to get Karen right back on.
What? I have it in here. I figured that was one less thing for you to deal with because it comes off, so I just pour instead of using the spout.
Sir, if you can hear me, would you please mute? All right.
Scott, this is Sadie.
Yes. Hi, Sadie.
Hi. I just want to jump in and echo something that I heard Margie say that I thought was really important. And it was about the people that operate the systems that sit in the locker rooms and complain about what the management company should do or what the building owner should do. And I think that's a really important group of people to engage, because we can put any systems we want in, but if they're not embraced and supported by the staff that maintains them, that's a broken piece. And I'm so happy that Margie joined us, because she really represents that industry of people that are operating the buildings that get designed and idealized as sustainable or green, but we really have to operate them. So I wanted to just say thank you to Margie for participating, but also, put on the list for NYSERDA to really figure out how better to engage that level of person in the mix here.
I think that's so important. I know from my experience in the space, Sadie, that it's one thing to design these improvements, and it's another thing to commission them. And then the piece that most often gets lost, which is what you're talking about, is how do you actually keep them operating over the arc of time so that you actually get the performance that everybody has been looking for in these things? Because honestly, a really well-designed building helps, but it doesn't actually get the same results if we don't take care of them. Okay, my understanding, Margie, did you want to respond? Because I think we've got Karen, but I'll give you a chance if I see your hand up. If you'd like to respond to what you just heard from Sadie or I, let's do that, and then we're going to go to Karen. Are you there, Margie?
Okay, good. So, yes, so on engaging the staff, the side of the owners, I've been promoting, open up not the entire financial and the details for the staff, but open up the operating budget and how we're doing. We all know at every board meeting, whether it's a quarterly or a monthly report, how are we doing against these numbers and this proportion of the budget and ahead and far. So I begged the owners to open up the simple operating budget in the areas that they can affect. So it may not necessarily be energy, it just may be better use of janitorial supplies, but let them see the numbers of what they're hands-on. So when they clean the traps better and when they do this better, it's then the board and the building management, I would love it if they could make a point to say, because we put the guys on this project and they've really been good on that, it actually affected those numbers, and then they get to see it. So to me, that's a Shangri-La of relationship.
Great. Thank you, Margie. So I'm going to, so Karen, I don't know if we have you on your line or Talia Howells, but let me know if you're here and speak up.
Can you hear me now?
Karen, we've got you. Welcome to the discussion. Take it away.
Hey, I apologize. Please advance.
No worries.
I apologize to everyone. And I want to move along very quickly so that we can continue this very robust discussion, and just a little bit about who New York State Homes and Community Renewal is. And when we talk about how we work with the public sector, private, and nonprofit sectors, we're very happy to be here with the Real Estate Roundtable. Many of you I work with, particularly NYSERDA, the New York City people, Aaron, and also HPD, HDC. We also work very closely with our sister agency, NYSERDA. So I'm not sure if that's where the feedback's coming from. It may be from Natalia's phone. Can you hear me now?
Still have you.
Okay. All right. So advance the slide, please. I'll just go quickly through these to talk a little bit about our priorities and the goal that we're working with now with the governor's 5-year plan, but for 100,000 affordable homes. But with as of last year, about 60,000 units, and a half of those are our preservation, our existing affordable housing. We've talked a lot about the refinancing of that to keep it affordable. So next slide, please. We talk about how we go about doing that, and of course, our tax-exempt bonds as of right, and then 4% tax credits, our 9% as well. But most of our housing is supplemented by capital programs where the state puts money to basically, in some cases, most cases, subsidize and also our state low-income tax credits. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, great. So half of those are, I think that's a repeat, but just again, we want to highlight today the preservation of taking existing housing and making it, of course, energy efficiency. And my job in working with the decision makers is to make sure that happens. Next slide, please. Some of the sustainability requirements with our housing, we want all the housing to meet some kind of national standards, also the NYSERDA programs, as well as a kind of minimum, an HCR, we have guideline standards, which we'll talk about more. With our new construction, we're pushing toward having it be more affordable to get it certified by the Climate Bond Initiative, where the whole goal is to reduce carbon emissions. And we are working very closely with the governor's Climate Leadership Action and Community Protection Act to see how we can move to the kind of electrification that we're talking about now. Our commissioner is a very active participant in that as we roll that out. But I've highlighted here our preservation projects, where we are working very closely with the city in this integrated physical needs assessment that combines the physical and capital needs. But we look at that as a way to start looking at our buildings differently. Next slide, please. What we do with that IPNA is to set the minimum target of kind of a 20% energy reduction. We're pushing for more. We hope to increase that as we go along. And the project scope from the IPNA is determined by whatever the budget-based approach of our term sheet. And we are benchmarking our existing portfolio because we have several portfolios, a very large portfolio. And we're looking at those buildings and to be more proactive versus waiting for owners to come to us, but using that data to do underwriting to savings in the future, as well as to address buildings that are the high energy users. So the benchmarking program has been a very important start to our efforts there. But we see that there are opportunities, and we're doing documenting those savings, working with CPC very closely and their underwriting to savings to get to really capture the energy efficiency in our operations. We also looking at ways to work with NYSERDA, the New York Green Bank, utility companies to closely incorporate resources that they have at the time that HCR is refinancing the projects that come to us. So with that, I believe that's my last slide, but to be a part of a discussion, and particularly with the audience that have gathered here today from the real estate industry. Thank you.